Welcome back to County Board Wrap Up and our discussion today with County Board Chair Matt DeFerranti and Board Member Christian Dorsey about some of the key decisions the board made at its February meeting. Now, there were some major changes to the residential permit parking program. The board's action taken in February culminated a 3-year review process, and it was the first major review of the program in more than a decade. And it was certainly not without quite a bit of controversy and some public comment on the process. So we will dive right in with that. Matt, why don't you start and kind of give us an overview?
Sure. We received so much in the way of citizen input on this issue. The packet was almost 200 pages of just comments, in addition to the staff report and the comments that we heard from residents virtually on Saturday. So it's an important issue that really impacts a lot of people's lives on just a tactical, operational, day-to-day level. And so what we've done is just shift how we're thinking about parking so that it's a little bit more efficient and a little bit more equitable. Efficient in terms of how you get the RPP eligibility. We had 2 complicated percentage-based tests, and we just simplified it so that it's you need a significant majority, but you can get that permit. And then we also recognize that of the households in the county, about 10% actually live in these zones. So many people don't, and we wanted to make the program equitable so that those of us who don't live in these permit zones aren't subsidizing the program entirely for the 10% who do. So that's going to mean an increase in fees so that the program can be budget neutral. And that's also, we think, going to be fair as we seek to use all of our resources equitably across the whole county. So that's some of it. We also took a major step in listening to comment and did not end up adopting the 2-hour paid parking in these residential permit zones. That's what we heard from so many residents about, and the board had consensus that at this stage, it just wasn't the right step, because if you think about some of the areas, Clarendon and Crystal City, we don't want them to become places where commuters come in, park there, and go into work via Metro. So that's kind of a high level. There's a lot of detail in this policy, but that's a high level of steps we took in this.
Well, to that end, and I know there were several different options that the board was presented with in terms of what some of these revamped programs might look like. But let's focus on the option that you ultimately decided on, and what are kind of the different steps within that, or features within that.
Sure, I'll talk a little bit more. And Christian, I know you had thoughtful comments as we tried to balance this. We talked a little bit about, I mentioned the 2-hour piece of things that we eventually opted not to include, but we also talked about the number of passes that is available to homeowners, and expanding the program so that small apartment buildings and townhomes also can get residential permits. So those 2 steps, allowing our multifamily neighbors that aren't in site plans, so usually it's townhomes, small condos, and small garden-style apartments, they now will have the chance, if they're located in these residential zones, to also participate. The other step I mentioned is the number of passes, and we debated this, but we decided that if you have a driveway, you should use it to park a car. And so the number of passes for those without driveways, we left at 4. And if you have a driveway, we put that at 2 additional passes that you would get. So you could park car or cars in your driveway, and then 2 on the streets in your zone. So those are 2 components, big components that we worked on. And I know that there's a number that were important to you, Christian. I also think that we shared the view on allowing the multifamily residences. There was an equity perspective that I think the whole board really shared. So I don't know if you want to add on that.
Yeah, those are the two top line takeaways for me. I mean, this was a 3+ year process, but at the end of the day, I think the result should clearly be seen as one that's created a program that is efficient and equitable. I mean, and really at the end of the day, when it comes to the use of a public resource, that's exactly what you want. We don't have people who need to pay for the service, who don't derive any benefit from it. And we're making it available to people based on circumstances and conditions, and not whether you live in one type of home or another. And so, as Matt mentioned, we have this principle that if you are developed under a paradigm that requires that you accommodate some level of parking for your occupants on your site, well, that should be treated the same, whether you are a single family home or a multifamily building. And in fact, in many ways, it's getting back to the roots of this program, because when it began, it didn't make that distinction between housing types. And somehow over the years, that had crept in. And I'm really glad that we were able to confront that. And then fundamentally, it's just really an important thing for people to consider. Matt mentioned 10% of our county residents are governed by a residential parking permit program, and that we didn't have any alignment with the cost to run the program and the fees that were charged, therefore creating the condition that the general public was essentially subsidizing this program that they could never, ever, or would not ever enjoy, was just untenable. So fixing those things makes for a better program that hopefully we won't have to review for a while.